So I want you to just picture the absolute hardest working person in a commercial kitchen right now. Like, think about the line cook.
Oh, yeah. Just sweating over a grill for like 80 hours a week.
Exactly, like a 600-degree stove, right? They never miss a shift. They're hustling faster than anyone else. Their hands are just totally calloused, and they come home completely physically destroyed every single night.
Right.
And we are, culturally conditioned to revere that level of grind. But here's this mathematical, unbreakable reality. By the pure laws of physics and economics, that person is guaranteed to never become truly wealthy doing that.
It is a brutal reality to confront. I mean, it really is.
Right.
Mainly because it completely shatters the foundational myth that, that most of us are fed from birth. Right?
100%.
From the time we can even understand language, society drills this very linear equation into our heads, which is, hard work equals wealth. But when you actually audit reality, like when you look at who holds the capital, that equation just falls apart instantly.
Right, because the hardest working people, the roofers, the line cooks, the agricultural workers, they are almost never the wealthy ones.
Exactly.
And because of that, like that massive disconnect between the conditioning and reality, when we see people who actually possess massive wealth, our brains just sort of short circuit.
Oh, totally. We resort to these defensive assumptions to protect our worldview.
Yes. We tell ourselves, well, they must have hit the genetic lottery, or they got incredibly lucky striking oil, or it's a trust fund, they just inherited it.
Right.
We treat wealth creation like a lightning strike. Like it's this mystical, chaotic event that just happens to a chosen few.
Which is, let's be honest, a highly convenient narrative. Because if you convince yourself that wealth is magic or just pure luck, you absolve yourself of the responsibility of trying to figure out how it actually works.
Right, yeah. You get to play the victim.
Exactly. You play the victim of circumstance. But wealth creation is not magic. It is not an accident of birth. It is an engineering problem. It is a highly specific mechanical skill that you can learn exactly like learning fluid dynamics or how to write C++ code, or even just how to ride a bicycle.
It's a system.
It's a system with inputs, levers, and outputs.
So if it's an engineering problem, we need a blueprint, right? And today, for this deep dive, we are pulling the exact schematics for this machine from the mind of Naval Ravikant.
Yes, naval is fascinating.
Right. Specifically, we're distilling the principles laid out in the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, which was compiled by Eric Jorgensen, alongside this incredibly sharp, nuanced breakdown of his philosophy by the analytical platform Grow Up.
It's a great compilation.
It really is. And for those who don't know, Naval is this legendary figure in Silicon Valley. He's an investor who hit on massive companies really early. But what makes him a crucial compass right now isn't his bank account. It's his clarity.
And clarity's rare.
Yeah, in an era where every influencer is screaming at you about the next altcoin or, some drop shipping scam, Naval treats wealth as this calm, philosophical discipline.
He really strips all the noise away and looks at the bare metal of how society values human effort. And our objective today is to deconstruct those exact mechanics.
Exactly.
We are going to separate the delusion of chasing money from the reality of engineering wealth and give you, the listener, the mathematical and philosophical formula to actually build the machine.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to build the machine, you have to actually know what the output is supposed to be. If you are trying to build wealth, but you fundamentally misunderstand what wealth even is, you're just going back to the kitchen to chop onions faster.
Like on a treadmill.
You have to recognize that what is sitting in your wallet or, sitting in your checking account is not wealth. Spoiler alert.
It's not. It's the ultimate systemic delusion. People spend decades of their lives desperately chasing money, entirely convinced they are building wealth. But money and wealth are entirely different species of economic energy.
Okay, break that down for us. Let's isolate money first.
So, money is simply an API for societal value. Think of it as a social IOU.
Hold on, I want to play devil's advocate here. If I have $10 million in a checking account right now, society looks at me and says, you are wealthy. Why are we splitting hairs between money and wealth?
I get that, but because the $10 million in the checking account is static, it is literally a receipt for past value created. When you solve a problem, when you write a piece of code that saves people time, society essentially hands you a token, right?
Yeah.
A digital number on a screen that says, thank you for your service, here's an IOU. You can redeem this token in the future for someone else's time or resources. It's just a medium of exchange. It's an artifact.
And wealth is different.
Wealth, on the other hand, is not a receipt. Wealth is the factory that prints the receipts. Wealth is defined specifically as assets that earn while you sleep.
Assets that earn independent of my physical time.
Completely independent. If you have to be physically present to turn the crank, it is not wealth. Wealth is a computer program running on a server farm in Virginia 24/7, executing trades or serving thousands of software customers while you are literally unconscious.
Wow, right.
Or wealth is a fleet of autonomous delivery drones. Wealth is a patent that generates royalties.
You know, there's a powerful analogy from the text that clarifies this instantly. It says, chasing money is like buying a movie ticket. You go to work, you give up your time, and society gives you your IOU.
Yep.
You take that IOU to the cinema, you buy a ticket, and you watch the movie. But the experience happens once. When the credits roll, the value is consumed, the money is gone. So to see another movie, you have to go back to work, bleed another 8 hours of your life, and buy another ticket.
You are caught in a perpetual consumption loop.
Exactly. Building wealth, however, is not buying the ticket. It is acquiring the entire movie theater.
Right.
You are not sitting in the dark watching the screen. You might be sleeping or hiking in the Alps or, I don't know, reading a book. But back at your theater, the architecture you built is operating. The projectionist is running the film. The kiosks are processing credit cards. The concession stand is selling high-margin popcorn.
And the system is generating revenue completely decoupled from your physical presence.
Yes.
And understanding that distinction is exactly why chasing money is a trap. If you're only chasing money, you're playing a zero-sum game.
Oh, absolutely.
You're competing for a finite pool of existing IOUs. If I negotiate a higher salary, I am taking that money directly from the company's profit margin.
Right.
It's a tug of war. And it usually bleeds into the pursuit of status, which is probably the oldest, most toxic zero-sum game in human history.
Right, because to be number one in status, you mathematically have to push someone else down to number two.
Yeah. Exactly. It requires dominance. It requires friction. But building wealth, constructing that theater is generative. It is positive sum.
Because you're introducing a new engine of value into the world that didn't exist before. You aren't fighting over the existing pie, you know. You're inventing a new oven.
Precisely. If you build a software tool that automates payroll for thousands of small businesses, you haven't taken money away from anyone. You've saved those businesses thousands of hours. They happily give you a fraction of the value created, and the entire GDP of the planet expands. That is positive sum.
Okay, I buy the premise. Wealth is the theater, not the ticket. But here's where it gets really interesting. If wealth is the theater, how do we stop being just the audience? Because telling someone who is currently renting their time to just go by the theater is, frankly, useless advice.
Oh, totally useless. It's a massive, terrifying leap from employee to owner.
Right. So how do we actually cross that chasm?
You cross that chasm by adopting a ruthless two-word philosophical operating system from Naval. Productize yourself.
Productize yourself. Okay, let's tear that apart. Because, to be honest, productize sounds so sterile. It sounds like turning yourself into a barcode or just a corporate asset.
I know it sounds corporate, but it's actually the opposite. It's a deeply individualistic concept.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate expression of individualism.
How so?
Let's look at the first half of the equation. Yourself. This isn't your job title. It's not the master's degree on your wall. Yourself represents the absolute unreplicable uniqueness of your mind. It is your specific obsessions, your weird childhood hobbies, the unique way your brain synthesizes information.
It's your accountability.
Exactly. And then the productized part is building the infrastructure to scale that uniqueness.
Yeah.
It's finding a way to package your essence into a system, a service, or a piece of media that could be distributed globally.
Right. Because if you don't productize yourself, society will do what it always does.
Right.
It will just rent your time.
Yes. And we go right back to the restaurant worker grinding 80 hours a week. Why are they not rich? Why is their income capped? Because their output is intrinsically tethered to a physical limit. They're only 24 hours in a day. You cannot cheat that physics.
Yeah.
No matter how brilliantly that cook sears a steak, they can only sear one steak at a time for a maximum of 24 hours. They have hit a biological ceiling.
But wait, I have to push back here. We are always told hard work is the pillar of success. Let's look at, say, a first-generation immigrant who comes to a new country, starts a landscaping business, and grinds 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. Are we saying hard work doesn't matter? Are we saying their effort is meaningless?
No, I am absolutely not saying the effort is meaningless, and Naval doesn't say that either. Hard work is a prerequisite.
Okay.
But hard work is just raw kinetic energy. Think of it as an engine revving at 10,000 RPM. If the transmission isn't engaged, if the steering wheel isn't pointed at a specific destination, all that raw energy just generates heat and friction. It doesn't actually move the car forward.
So the effort is there, but the direction, the vector is wrong.
Exactly. Knowing what to do, who to do it with, and when to execute is exponentially more important than simply how hard you work. The landscaper working 10 hours a day is generating a little bit of wealth. But if that same landscaper stepped back, stopped pulling weeds for a week, and used that mental energy to design an automated irrigation system that he could patent and sell to 10,000 other landscaping companies.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That is applying direction to the hard work. Blindly working hard is a trap that keeps you too exhausted to look up and spot the leverage.
So if you don't know the exact direction you should be running, you shouldn't just be sprinting on a treadmill for 80 hours. You should step off the treadmill and spend all your time figuring out that direction first.
Yes. And finding that direction means you have to solve the yourself part of the equation. You have to unearth what Naval calls your specific knowledge.
Which introduces a concept that completely breaks, like, the entire premise of how we educate human beings. Because the rule is, specific knowledge cannot be taught in a school or college.
Well, I mean, it fundamentally cannot. Yeah.
Hold on, that is a massive claim. What about a neurosurgeon or an aerospace engineer? They spend 12 to 15 years in the most rigorous educational institutions on the planet to acquire highly specialized knowledge. Are you telling me they don't have specific knowledge?
Economically speaking, yes. They are highly paid commodities.
What? Wait, explain that.
Let's look at the math of the neurosurgeon. They have acquired highly complex general knowledge. It is difficult to acquire, which is why the supply of surgeons is low and their salary is high. But think about the underlying mechanism of a medical school. If society can sit you in a lecture hall, hand you a syllabus, test you on surgical procedures, and graduate you, they can do that to someone else tomorrow.
Right, they can train someone else to replace you.
They are essentially running a cloning facility for human labor.
So if someone can be trained to replace you, your market value drops to zero eventually, or at least your leverage is inherently capped.
Exactly. If you are replaceable, the market will eventually find someone willing to do the surgery for slightly less money. And more importantly, the surgeon is still renting their time. If the surgeon's hand shakes, or they want to take a 6-month sabbatical, their income goes to zero. They don't have wealth.
Okay, so what is specific knowledge then, if it's not a medical degree?
Specific knowledge is a highly complex, idiosyncratic blend of your exact DNA, your unique upbringing, and your natural, unforced obsessions. It is the stuff you couldn't help but learn.
Look at Naval's own origin story from the source material, which perfectly illustrates how weird and unpredictable this cocktail is. When Naval was a kid, he didn't want to be a venture capitalist. He wanted to be an astrophysicist.
Ray was obsessed with science.
He loved the mechanics of the universe. But his mother watched him as he grew up, and by the time he was 15, she saw a completely different pattern. She noticed that he devoured books at an unnatural rate. He could ingest massive amounts of data, analyze it instantly, spot the underlying technological trends, and then communicate his findings with this piercing, unshakable conviction.
Yeah.
She looked at that bizarre combination of traits and told him, "You are going to be a titan in business." That was his specific knowledge.
She identified it before he even did. She saw the things that came so effortlessly to him that he didn't even register them as skills. He probably thought everybody processed information that way.
And that brings us to the ultimate litmus test for uncovering your own specific knowledge.
Which is?
It feels like play to you, but it looks like hard work to everyone else. Oh man, that is the compass needle right there. If you can sit at a desk and parse through, like, thousands of rows of messy supply chain data, and to you, it feels like solving a beautiful puzzle. You enter a flow state, but your colleagues look at you and say, "I would rather drink bleach than look at that spreadsheet for 5 minutes. You have struck oil."
Yes, you have found your specific knowledge. Because you can sustain effort in that domain for decades without burning out, while your competitors have to expend massive amounts of willpower just to show up. And willpower is finite. play is infinite.
This completely reframes the anxiety around competition, too. We are constantly terrified of crowded markets, but the concept here is escape competition through authenticity. If you are perfectly yourself, no one can compete with you.
Because no one else is you. You secure the ultimate monopoly.
Like Joe Rogan in the podcasting space, the text brings him up. You can go out right now and buy the exact same microphones Rogan uses. You can rent a studio with the same lighting. You can even invite the same MMA fighters and comedians onto your show, but you will never, ever be Joe Rogan. Because you don't have his highly specific background of competing in Taekwondo, combined with 20 years of stand-up comedy, combined with his peculiar brand of aggressive, relentless curiosity. You cannot copy his DNA.
Right.
Or take Bill Watterson, the creator of Calvin and Hobbes. There are thousands of better technical illustrators in the world, right? But nobody can successfully copy Calvin and Hobbes because they cannot replicate that unique, cynical, yet wondrous philosophical worldview that Watterson possessed. They are bulletproof against competition because they aren't trying to be anyone else.
They are playing a game of one.
But I have a huge problem with this.
Okay, let's hear it.
What if what comes naturally to me, my weird, authentic obsession, isn't trending in the market right now? What if my specific knowledge is restoring vintage analog synthesizers or, studying the migratory patterns of deep-sea jellyfish? Society does not give a damn about that right now. Shouldn't I just suppress that, look at what is trending, say artificial intelligence, and force myself to learn that so I can actually make a living?
That is the logical trap that keeps people miserable. It introduces what we can call the society paradox. You are assuming society knows what it wants.
Doesn't it?
It doesn't. Society is entirely reactive. It does not actually know what it will need in the future. If you suppress your specific knowledge to chase whatever is trending today, you are, by definition, arriving late. You are jumping onto a crowded bandwagon right as the wheels are about to fall off.
Because by the time it's a trend, the people with specific knowledge in that field have already captured the monopoly.
Precisely. If you chase the trend, you will always be one step behind, competing against people for whom that field is played. They will destroy you. The alternative is counterintuitive, but it's mathematically sound. You refine your specific knowledge. You dive entirely into your obscure obsession.
Even the analog synthesizers.
Yes. You become the absolute best in the world at restoring vintage synthesizers. You document it, you talk about it, and then you wait. Because eventually, the cultural pendulum swings, music producers demand analog warmth, and society realizes it desperately needs exactly what you have. And when the market arrives at your doorstep, you command massive demand because you'll be the only one who can provide it.
But waiting for society to realize it needs you takes time. Finding this specific knowledge takes a lot of experimentation. In fact, you're going to fail a lot while you do this. Which brings us to a concept from Naval that sounds incredibly depressing at first, but it's actually a superpower.
Naval's 99% rule.
Yes. The rule states that 99% of effort is wasted. And he applies this to almost everything. The books we read, the things we learn in school, the companies we start that fail, even dating before marriage. 99% of it, he claims, is a complete waste.
It's a bold claim.
Okay, let's unpack this. Doesn't that make you want to just give up? If 99% of the actions I take today are statistically guaranteed to be a waste, why do anything? That is incredibly demoralizing.
Well, it sounds demoralizing if you view failure as a permanent loss. But that is the wrong lens. The 99% rule is actually a brilliant energy conservation strategy. It's an energy strategy, really.
Walk me through the physics of that.
Imagine you are dropped in the middle of the massive, dark maze, and you are looking for the center. If you walk down a corridor and hit a dead end, did you waste your time?
I mean, it feels like it.
But you didn't. You gathered data, you successfully identified a path that does not work, which narrows the possibility space. Every failed startup, every terrible date, every useless book you skim and throw away is a micro lesson. It's a rapid data gathering mechanism.
Right.
The goal isn't to avoid the dead ends. The goal is to sprint down them as fast as possible, hit the wall, and quickly identify what doesn't work so you can pivot without emotional attachment.
You fail fast to map the territory.
Exactly. And you churn through that 99% of noise ruthlessly, precisely, so you can identify the 1%. Because when you finally stumble upon the 1%, the right career path that aligns with your specific knowledge, the right business partner, the person you want to spend your life with, the strategy, flips entirely. You don't dabble anymore.
You invest 100% of your focus and energy into that single compounding vector.
Yes.
Compounding. Okay, let's dig into that, because when we hear compound interest, we are conditioned to think about banking, right? Like a 401k or Warren Buffett snowballing dividends. But the framework here expands compounding way beyond banking.
Oh, way beyond. The highest returns in wealth, in knowledge, and most importantly in relationships come from compounding.
Relationships. Naval's heuristic here is play long-term games with long-term people.
It is essential.
Let's look at how Naval actually executed this in the real world, because there is this specific story from the deep dive about Naval and another investor in Silicon Valley, Elad Gil, that proves how compounding trust alters the physics of business.
It's a great example.
So Naval and Elad were navigating the early days of tech investing, and it's a hyper-competitive, paranoid environment in Silicon Valley. Egos are massive, millions of dollars are on the line. Inevitably, in any joint venture, there is friction, right? Small miscalculations, a few $1,000s missing here, an unexpected legal fee there.
It's just the standard thermodynamic drag of doing business with other humans.
Exactly. Most people would stop the deal, audit the spreadsheet, and argue over who owes who $5,000. But Elad Gil did something completely irrational by standard business metrics. Whenever those small financial frictions occurred, Elad would just quietly pay for them out of his own pocket.
Wow.
He didn't send an invoice. He didn't even tell Naval he was doing it. He just absorbed the cost and kept the momentum moving.
Because he was buying something far more valuable than the few $1,000s he spent. He was building unbreakable, unshakable trust over time.
Exactly. Eventually, Naval realized what Elad was doing behind the scenes, and the psychological impact was massive. It proved that Elad was playing a decade-long game. And what was the tangible result of that trust compounding? When they eventually had to execute multi-million-dollar investments together, the business deals became effortless.
Because the friction was literally zero. This is the hidden mechanic of high-trust environments. If I don't trust you, I have to hire an army of corporate lawyers, right? We have to draft endless contracts to protect my downside. It causes paranoia. But in a high-trust environment with long-term people, you bypass all of that drag.
Yeah.
You shake hands over coffee, the wire transfer goes out, and you start building seamless wealth creation.
So you found your 1% path and your long-term people. The foundation is poured, but now you actually have to step into the arena. You have to build the machine that captures the value. And there are two absolute non-negotiable pillars required to capture value: accountability and equity.
Let's start with accountability. If you want to capture massive value, you have to take risk under your own name. Society only rewards those who put their reputation on the line.
There's a fantastic maritime analogy for this from the text. Accountability means you are the captain of the ship. When the sea is calm, the captain gets the glory. But if the ship hits a reef and sinks, you are the last one out. You take the immense fame if things go well, and total infamy if they fail.
It is the literal definition of taking risk.
Yeah.
Look at modern corporate structures. The vast majority of people choose to be mid-level managers at massive corporations because it offers the illusion of safety.
Right.
If a new product line fails, the manager might get a mediocre performance review, but they are insulated from the blast radius. But the physics of risk dictate that if you are insulated from the downside, you are mathematically capped on the upside. The founder whose name is on the door takes the $1 million payout because they absorb the existential risk.
But taking risk under your own name is terrifying. If you fail publicly, you get ostracized.
It is terrifying, sure, but modern society is astonishingly forgiving of honest failure. The physical risks are completely gone. You aren't going to face the firing squad if your startup goes bankrupt. All that remains is reputational risk. It is just the fear of looking foolish.
Let's look at Naval's own career as proof of how cheap reputational risk actually is. Back around 2014 or 2015, Naval had built a pristine reputation as a Silicon Valley venture capitalist. He was a serious tech guy. But his specific knowledge was broader than that. He loved philosophy. So he stepped out of his safe box and started speaking publicly and tweeting about ancient philosophy and happiness.
And the immediate reaction from his peers was deeply critical. People in the tech ecosystem mocked him. They said, "Stick to software. Why are you talking about the Buddha?"
But he took the risk under his own name. He faced the criticism, and what was the result? The temporary mockery evaporated, and his willingness to look foolish elevated him from a niche tech guy to a globally recognized thinker. By absorbing that reputational risk, he unlocked unprecedented global recognition.
Accountability puts you on the map. It gets you recognition. But recognition doesn't pay the mortgage. To actually capture the wealth, you need the second pillar: equity.
Risk gets you recognition, but equity gets you wealth.
Yes.
If you do not own a piece of a business, you do not have wealth. Period.
Yeah.
Even highly skilled, highly paid professionals like doctors or lawyers aren't creating true wealth if they don't have their own practices. If you don't have ownership, you are just renting your time.
Let's break down the cab driver analogy from the source material. A cab driver only makes money when the meter is running. They sit in the seat, they push the gas pedal. If they get sick, their income instantly stops. They are trading biological energy for money.
Right.
But step back and look at the person who owns the cab company. The owner possesses the fleet. It doesn't matter if the owner is sick in bed or on vacation or whatever. The machinery is in motion. Equity means you are a shareholder. Without it, all the surplus value of your 80-hour work week simply flows upward into the owner's bank account.
Equity is the non-negotiable threshold. Getting equity is the first step. But how do you scale it massively without working 24 hours a day? You need a lever. Which brings us to the ultimate multiplier, the concept that defines modern billionaires. Leverage.
Leverage is the soul of modern wealth creation. The Greek mathematician Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, and I will move the earth."
So let's break down the evolution of leverage because it's changed entirely. There are 3 distinct types. Type 1 is the oldest form, labor leverage.
Managing people, other human beings working for you.
Which, honestly, is mostly a massive headache. Managing human beings is incredibly complex. They get tired, they need HR departments, they make mistakes. Modern billionaires don't rely solely on this to scale quickly. It's too slow.
Which forces the evolution to type 2, capital leverage. This is using money to make money. It is the Warren Buffett method. You take capital, you allocate it, and the money acts as your workforce.
It's way better than labor. A dollar bill doesn't need a lunch break. But there is a major flaw in capital leverage.
The fatal flaw is that capital leverage requires permission.
Yes.
You cannot utilize capital leverage without someone else's approval. You have to convince a bank manager to underwrite your loan, or someone has to trust you enough to give you their money. If the gatekeeper says no, your lever is broken.
Which sets the stage for the greatest economic paradigm shift in human history. Type 3 leverage, code and media.
The modern game changer.
It is completely permissionless.
Exactly. You do not need anyone's approval to write a book, record a podcast, shoot a YouTube video, or write software. If you have a laptop, you can distribute it to 8 billion people instantly. No gatekeepers.
And the magic behind why this creates billionaires so quickly is an economic concept called zero marginal cost. Can you explain that simply?
Let's go back to your local bakery. If the baker wants to bake and sell 1,000 cakes, they need 1,000 times the flour, 1,000 times the sugar, and thousands of hours of labor. The cost scales linearly with the output. Every new unit produced carries a cost. But if a software programmer writes an app, the upfront cost might be high. But once it's finished, it costs exactly the same amount of effort, whether one person downloads that app or 100,000 people download it. The cost to produce the second unit is functionally zero.
I love this concept, and here's how I synthesize this beautifully. The old way of building wealth labor leverage was like begging a group of people to help you rub 2 sticks together for warmth in the snow. It's exhausting. But code and media leverage is like inventing the matchbox, building an automated factory, and handing it out to the entire world for free.
That is a brilliant mechanical analogy.
Right. And this explains why a 10x programmer actually creates 100x or 1,000x the output, because thousands of servers act as an army of free laborers working while the programmer is asleep. Look at Mark Zuckerberg in his dorm room or global YouTubers. They don't hire a billion messengers to run around. The code and media do the labor.
Yes.
But wait, I can hear the listener right now saying, not everyone is a software engineer. What if I can't code to save my life? Am I just locked out of this?
Not at all. You don't have to code. Media is the great equalizer. Media is simply code that runs on human brains instead of computers.
Let's use the real estate agent example from the text.
Perfect. If you are a traditional real estate agent going door to door selling houses, that is labor leverage. It is exhausting. But what happens when that agent applies media leverage?
They shoot a brilliant, highly creative, cinematic marketing video of a luxury villa. They put it on the internet, and instead of standing in an empty house all Sunday, that video pitches the house to 50,000 targeted buyers simultaneously at 3:00 a.m. while the agent is fast asleep.
Exactly. They sell the luxury villas in a fraction of the time. That is media leverage. The more creative you are, the higher your leverage.
Okay, so if we combine all this specific knowledge, equity, and permissionless leverage, we have a foolproof formula. But there is a massive roadblock standing in the way of most people adopting this, right?
Yes, the roadblock is our societal programming. The ultimate superpower combo for the new knowledge worker is learn to build, learn to sell. If you can do both, you will be unstoppable.
But our education system doesn't teach that.
No, the current education system is fundamentally broken for this new era. It is entirely designed around the labor leverage mindset. It's an industrial age relic that trains students to trade hours for dollars. It trains you to be a compliant factory worker.
So how should we work instead if the factory worker mindset is a trap?
Naval suggests modern knowledge workers need to operate like athletes, not factory workers.
What does that look like? The athlete versus the factory worker.
You don't grind out a continuous 40-hour week. An Olympic sprinter doesn't jog at a medium pace for 8 hours. Instead, you sprint at absolute maximum capacity on a high-leverage task for a short burst.
And then?
Then you rest, recover, and reassess your strategy. You allow your brain to process the complex problems. Then you sprint again. Resting is part of the work when the quality of your decisions matters more than the duration of your effort.
So what does this all mean? It means trying to build wealth without understanding leverage and specific knowledge is like looking for a coin in muddy water. You're just thrashing around.
You're just generating heat, no forward motion.
Exactly. So let's rapidly recap the ultimate wealth creation formula we derived from this deep dive. 1. Uncover your irreplaceable specific knowledge. 2. Play long-term games with long-term people for compound interest, and accept that 99% of early exploration is just data gathering. 3. Take accountability under your own name. 4. Secure equity. And 5. Multiply it infinitely using the permissionless leverage of code or media.
The blueprint is completely laid out.
It is.
And I want to deliver a final lingering challenge to you, the listener, directly. The blueprint is right in front of you.
Yeah.
But it requires leaving behind the safety of the 9-to-5 industrial age mindset.
Yeah.
Look at the work you did today. Were you sprinting like an athlete to build your own movie theater? Or were you just trading another hour of your life to buy someone else's movie ticket? It's time to figure out what your specific knowledge is, hiding in plain sight, and start building.